The Joe Rogan Experience.
Let's take it back to the beginning. So I know they were bugging your phones, but you kind of knew they were bugging your phones, right?
You know, when you come out of Chicago politics, which is a politics that probably has a larger proportion of corruption than
That's how they got JFK elected,
other places,
right?
Yeah.
The mob was involved in that.
Yeah, that's well done. The River Awards made the difference. Mayor Daley, the first Mayor Daley, was holding back the counting of those votes until he saw what Southern Illinois Republican area came up with. And once those votes were counted, then he let those River Awards come out. And Giancana, people like that, were really instrumental in electing Kennedy. And then when Bobby Kennedy started going after Giancana, as the Attorney General, they felt betrayed.
Rightly so.
Yeah, of course. But
A deal's a deal, right?
I mean, apparently the father made the deal, right?
Yeah.
But with me, it was, I always felt that there was a possibility that not only would they be listening, but that somebody would set you up. And through the years in politics, people would. They'd come to you and offer you things that you knew were illegal. And you didn't do it because it was illegal. But also you felt this could be a setup. This could be the FBI trying to entrap you into doing something.
And that's a common thing.
Not an uncommon thing.
So when what was the first charge that was brought against you? Or if you could just bring us back to the moment when you knew they were coming after you.
I was elected the first Democratic governor in Illinois in November 2002 after 26 years of Republican governors. I first learned that they began to look into my administration and people around me in December of 2003. And I had been governor for 10 months, and they were already looking. And I knew it, which meant we got to be extra careful because these people are scrutinizing us. On the one hand, I felt good. That puts pressure on people around me, and people are doing work for me to do the legal things and not cross lines. I never imagined that the FBI and the Department of Justice and these U.S. attorneys who come out of the best schools would be so corrupt and dishonest. I felt like, okay, they'll look and see how we do things, and if we make some mistakes along the way, we'll make adjustments. So they chased me for 5 years. And by the time they taped my phones, it was no surprise. There was all kinds of pressure at that time because they'd gotten a guy who was close to me and Obama, a guy by the name of Tony Oresco, who they probably convicted him of things that weren't crimes either. They were squeezing him to say things about me and Obama. He wouldn't do it. They put him into solitary confinement for 3 years to get him to invent crimes against us. He wouldn't do it. This guy's a stand-up guy. Obama sold him out, and he did more for Obama than he ever did for me. But I knew all of that. And so at the time when they began wiretapping my phones, which was late October 2008, everything I talked about doing with regard to the appointment of Obama's successor to the United States Senate, I felt it was very possible they were listening. How could they not? Because they were chasing me. They so much wanted to get me. And Obama and I both were in their crosshairs in the very beginning, but I think the politics of it changed as his political fortunes improved, and he looked like he was going to be the next president. And these people, these U.S. attorneys, get appointed by the president. And these were Bush-appointed, Cheney-appointed prosecutors. And it's very unusual that the previous administration's prosecutors stay in office. When the new president comes in, they leave, as you see with Trump and the other parties, people come in. But these people stayed in, and when they arrested me, what they wanted me to do was to basically say that I was guilty of trying to sell a Senate seat, and I was trying to sell it to another guilty party, who was the guy who started the whole thing, by the name of Barack Obama, who wanted to buy that Senate seat, because that's where the whole thing began. It was Obama on election night. He sent an emissary to me to suggest a political deal because he wanted this woman named Valerie Jarrett to be appointed to his Senate seat.
So Obama was – so how did he try to negotiate? Like when he wanted this person to take his Senate seat, like what was said? How did it go down? How do things like that work?
You use third parties, emissaries,
so that you're
two
not
people.
So he doesn't have to meet with you, so you can say Obama asked me. You have other people, so there's plausible deniability.
To some extent, that's part of it, of course. But there's other dynamics that also it's just a little bit easier to kind of test the mood of the other person if you have a third party who both the people like or respect. In this particular case, it was a labor boss by the name of Tom Balinoff. He came up to me election night in November 2008. That was the election you voted for Obama. You and I are both guilty of that. And I was there that night. Chicago was magical, historic. And it was great in the sense that finally America, crossed a significant barrier. A black person can be elected president of the United States. Every black child growing up can now look and say, one day maybe I can be that. There's the American dream and opportunity. So in that sense, it was a beautiful thing. So this Balanoff guy comes up to me and he says, Barack called me last night. He said I was pumping gas in this gas station in the South Loop area downtown Chicago. Barack called me last night. He said it was around, he even told me the time, like around 6:30 or 7 at night. And he asked me to come to you. He would like you to appoint Valerie Jarrett as his successor to the Senate. He wanted me to know what you want. I wonder if I can come and see you so we can discuss this. I said, sure, call me tomorrow. Now, that's totally legal and appropriate. He's not suggesting anything illegal. Obama just wants to make a political deal. But what happened was they criminalized it against me. So
they criminalized Barack Obama trying to force his pick for Senate seat and you accepting it.
Obama wasn't trying to force it. He was trying to make a deal to persuade me to do it.
Or what would you get out of that?
That's what we discussed for 6 weeks, and the FBI was talking about that. And we discussed all kinds of crazy ideas, a lot of good ideas. Spent 2 days talking about the possibility of appointing Oprah Winfrey.
What?
You might appreciate this. Yeah, I know. She's from Chicago. And
do you remember when Trump won? There was like, it was NBC or one of these fucking people tweeted out, "This is our president," and it was Oprah.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
No.
see how you find that. Like a major network tweeted out, "This is our president."
Wow.
I was like, okay.
So we spent 6 weeks talking about all kinds of ideas because this was, to quote me, fucking golden. I'm not giving it up for nothing. We got a chance to do something with this. And all of these ideas and thoughts were discussed with my governor's lawyer on all those calls, largely because I knew these people were chasing me, and I wanted to be sure whatever decision I made, it was legal. We didn't cross lines or make a mistake, and maybe I missed something. And, this was unique, and so I explored all kinds of ideas. I even spent one conversation, I think you might appreciate this. They played this at court in my first trial. My wife's sitting there, loving, dutiful, devoted, faithful wife, sitting in a courtroom every single day at both trials. And the media's in there every day. And they could do whatever they want, these prosecutors. The judge was their guy. And so they're playing all these tapes out of context. They're not allowing me to play tapes we want to fill up the context. They only played 2% of the tapes. They denied 98% of them. To this day, those tapes are covered up because all kinds of people are on those calls. There wasn't anything illegal about it, but, Rahm Emanuel, Harry Reid at the time was the Democratic leader. Every possible big-time Democrats on those calls with me.
So if you just went along with whatever they asked and didn't ask for any political bartering, you think nothing would have come of this?
Oh, no, I would have. Oh, you mean just political bartering?
If they came to you and said Obama would like you to put this person in as senator, if you just agreed to it, you think none of this would have happened?
No, I think they were going to do whatever they did to get me no matter what.
Why?
Because they had spent so much time and money, 5 years.
But why did they do that? Why'd they come after you?
I think part of it has to do with a lot of it has to do with the actual U.S. attorney. His name is Patrick Fitzgerald. He and James Comey are real close. It's this sort of FBI, DOJ type people who've become part of today's Department of Justice, and they feel like they're a power center of their own right, that they're this new political place in American government. They are so dangerous to our freedoms in this country. I think it was largely that. He had convicted the previous governor, Republican governor, Ryan, of crimes that he had committed when he was the Secretary of State of Illinois. And so now he could be the first guy in history to get 2 straight governors. And I think it was that. I think he wanted to leverage Obama to keep him in office so he could finish the job and get me after investing 5 years, and he came up with nothing. That's why they invented the crimes from those conversations. And if anybody doubts this, and I fully understand why people would, the question I'd ask people is, well, you tell me what side is lying. The side that refuses to play 98% of the tapes that they made, or the guy that's saying play them all, warts and all. There's unflattering calls where I say stupid things or, I'm angry or whatever the case may be, or I'm using profanity. They already played those. But play those tapes. What are you hiding? The side that's hiding is the side that's lying. And they're hiding it to this day. They covered up all those tapes. They wouldn't even let me play them in court in the second trial, even though they promised that I could play them if I testified at the second trial. And so I got up on the stand, Joe, and the judge had promised on the 20th of May, 2011, I thought this was the day I'd be vindicated. He said, look, if he agrees to testify, he can play the tapes to corroborate his testimony. Because I was a lawyer and I was also a prosecutor at the state level, Cook County prosecutor. And I know how the system works, and I know that if you get up there and you're saying certain things, and one side has tapes of you saying something, and you're saying stuff, but you don't have tapes to corroborate what you're saying, the prosecutor is going to simply tell the jury in closing argument, go back at the jury room and see how many times you hear what he testified to corroborated by those tapes. And if you don't find any tapes, then you know who's lying. I knew this. But when the judge said I can do it on the record, I felt beautiful. I'll testify. And then we'll play the tapes to back up my testimony. So I get up there and I testify. Then when it's time to play the tapes, the judge won't allow them. It was a setup. And then the prosecutor does exactly what I knew they would do if those tapes weren't heard. He says, go back into the jury room and see how many times he talked about the Madigan deal, because that was the big deal I was about to make before they arrested me. You won't hear a single tape, even though there were 102 conversations on that subject. They were all covered up, and the jury didn't know those tapes existed. It was a total fucking frame-up in a rigged criminal justice system, in a court that was rigged. And that's today's America. And why? What happened to Trump is so important. They did it to him in those different courts where they got the convictions for things that weren't crimes.
Day one, do you have hope it's going to be overturned in an appeal? Like, what are you thinking when you get in there?
Yeah, boy, it's a great question. Look, the hardest period during this whole thing was the months after the conviction to the day that you surrender, because now you know you're going away, and you're fearful it's going to be long. In fact, a couple of months before the sentence came down, I'm jogging, I'm running through the neighborhoods, and I see, that was newspapers back then. It's a newspaper box, front page, big colored picture of me. I see it. I'm running past it. I saw the headline briefly. I came back running in place. I see it. 30 years to life. The prosecutors are asking for 30 years to life on me.
Life.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I never took a penny. They don't even say I took a penny. It was all talk about politics. So I got home faster. That sort of stuff quickens your pace a little bit,
Yeah.
But that period was the hardest. The moment I stepped into prison, I write in my book that one advantage of crossing the threshold into prison was that with every tick of the clock, you're 1 second closer to this nightmare, this Kafkaesque nightmare finally being over. 1 second closer to coming home to your daughters and to your wife, even though it might be 14 years and one less second. You know what I mean? But you're at least it's starting now.
Yeah.
You've hit the bottom, and now you're climbing back up, just from a time point of view. But that first day, I'll work backwards. I'll never forget the first night after that long, long day that I went through. The media was covering me like I was O.J. Simpson. They were at my house at 5:30 in the morning when I kissed my little girls goodbye. My little Annie Banani, who was 8 years old at the time. She's in her pajamas, and she hugs and squeezes me. And my daughter Amy, she was a sophomore in high school. She was 15. And we're all in the foyer. It's all dark because you got all these media trucks around your house. We live in a neighborhood, a normal neighborhood, just not gated. And they're all over the place. And so they look into your house. So we had to keep the lights off. Kiss my wife goodbye, my two daughters. The hardest thing I've ever did was saying goodbye to them. But you got to be strong for them. And you can't show those assholes in the media that you're dying inside. So you got to be strong when you step out. There's all kinds of film footage of that when I left. And there's a helicopter that follows me, the news helicopter from my house all the way to O'Hare Airport in Chicago. Like I was O.J. Simpson in that white Bronco. I called the chapter my white Bronco moment. And then when I got at the airport, there was this big gaggle of media there. And then when I get on the plane, these motherfuckers are on the plane. They bought tickets. So I can't even give it a second to think about what just happened, me saying goodbye to my family. And I'll be gone for worst case scenario, 14 years. But if I behave myself, it'll be 12 and a half years, right? Good behavior. And then I land in Denver, and they're there. And so I'm trying to leave the plane. They're all waiting there at the gate. And then the people in Denver were really nice at the airline. I think it was United Airlines. And they got me out a side door, and they had a car waiting, so I was able to leave. And for a moment, I thought I was away from the media as I'm about to drive to prison. But no, they caught us. They caught up with us. And I got there a little bit early to prison, so I told one of my lawyers who was driving me, you know what, we're like a half an hour early. I'm already giving him 14 years. I don't want to give him 30 minutes more. Let's stop for a cup of coffee or something. So we went to this little restaurant, a little fast food place called Freddy's in Denver, the Denver area, Littleton, Colorado. And it was really surreal because, people knew who I was, and they were really warm and loving. I'm signing autographs. You'd never know. I'm about to go to prison for 14 years. And And then the time came to walk in.